So, welcome, Such Amin. It's Such Amin.
Either or. Such
Yeah,
Amin, yeah,
I'm
yeah.
sure you've had all of those, haven't
I
you?
have, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, for our viewers, Such is a good friend of mine. I've known you now, Such, for I would say about 8 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we'll get into the detail of what we've done over the years together, and obviously a lot more about your story. But I wanted to start by saying thanks for giving me some of your precious time. Uh, it'll come apparent to our viewers that you run a couple of businesses as well as a successful household. So time is the one thing we can't get much back, isn't it, Such?
Yeah, I mean, I've always said, actually, I can never be a good businessman, a good father, and a good husband all at the same time.
No.
And although the current climate is making some of that a little bit easier, I must admit.
Yes, that's right. Exactly. Good. There's good upside, isn't there, to
There is.
this? And I think the world is starting to see that, and people might adapt the way they go about their lives beyond this. Again, for the benefit of any listeners that tune in 2025, because this will be on YouTube and the various podcast channels. We're in May 2020, and we are just starting to come out of lockdown. So that's why we're talking in these terms, of course.
Yeah.
So anyway, how are you, Such?
Generally, great. Fitting well. Really exciting. There's lots of good stuff going on in business, and I guess to some extent at home. So generally, yeah,
Yes.
in a good place.
Yeah, yeah. What age are your kids now, Such?
So my eldest is 12,
Yeah.
and my youngest will be 10 in a couple of weeks.
Fantastic. So I mean, I say fantastic. Well, it is absolutely fantastic, but their educational requirements aren't at a particularly sensitive stage that can't be caught up on.
That's right. Yeah. So we went through the 11 plus journey last year with our eldest, which ended quite successfully for her. She got the school where she wanted to go, which is great.
Good.
And yeah, the younger one has still got another year before her 11 plus kind of kicks in. So yeah.
Yes, yes. Well, that's a blessing. Mine are Daisy's in her what I would call fourth year, so it's GCSE year next year.
Right.
So it's quite sensitive. Well, it's very sensitive for her. Joe, my son, who's 17, nearly 18, thinks his Christmases have come at once because he finished school about 8 weeks ago. His predicted grades look good.
Right.
His university place that depends on it has been offered.
Great.
Can you imagine that, Such?
No, I couldn't. I mean, I do distinctly remember my A levels, and actually, I was only just speaking to my wife about it the other day, and I remember so vividly collecting my A levels and missing out on paper by one grade for what I needed to get to go and study law at Liverpool University, and I was horrified because I was convinced I'd nailed it. And these are obviously back in the days when you didn't have mobile phones, or so I immediately went to the careers office, and I walked in with this piece of paper, and I was devastated. And the lady was fantastic. She said, "Don't worry, take a seat. Let's call the university."
Mm-hmm.
So we called up Liverpool University, and she got through to the right person. And then I spoke to somebody at the Faculty of Law, and I explained the situation. She goes, "Don't worry, you're perfectly safe. We would love you to still come, despite the fact that you missed out. It's not an issue." And I was happy about that. Then actually received my grade. I mean, I didn't get bad grades, far from it, but I was over the moon about that, more so than actually the grades I achieved. And it was the first bit of news I gave to my dad, not the actual results. That I got into uni, that was the important thing. The grades I kind of forgot about for a bit.
Tactical, I like it. Yeah, yeah. And do you know what? My story is similar to that. I probably missed out by 2 grades. I can't remember the exact numbers, but I did the same thing. But I rang them up, the university, and I said, just before I, completely, this is part of my entrepreneur spirit, I think. Just before I dismiss this opportunity and go to my second option, can you let me know if there's any chance? And they looked and they went, oh yeah, she said, I'm just processing your application now. I'm sending the letter out to say you've been accepted.
Right. Well, I mean, it crossed my mind whether, they were waiting for people to call up. It did cross my mind because they inevitably will have, would have dished out more offers than arguably they've got places for.
Yes.
And I think that's just the nature of the process, isn't it? And of course they get the results before we even do, which arguable whether that's right or wrong. But you do wonder whether they're just waiting for those that are, first come, first serve almost.
Yeah, well, you know that my line of work, as well as a few other things, which maybe we'll talk about another time, but the thing that I've been most involved in is recruitment over the last 15 years. And I always advise my candidates, when you've had your job interview, a great thing to do is follow up and say, I really enjoyed it. I hope that you enjoyed it too. And I'm really looking forward to hearing back from you, and let me know if there's anything else I can answer for you in the meantime. Because what it does is, of course, it demonstrates enthusiasm and eagerness.
And you'll be surprised how little that happens.
Yeah.
I mean, it's such a simple thing to do, but it sticks out like a sore thumb. I mean, I've lost count of the number of people I've recruited, not just through my businesses, but before, when I was in positions of authority at previous law firms. But the lack of follow up by candidates is genuinely surprising.
Yeah.
It makes such a difference. Such a small thing.
It does, and it doesn't take any effort. I think there's a confidence issue with people sometimes. They worry that they're going to be hassling and they might leave a bad impression. But any business owner or senior leader in a business will know someone that's got the nous to take that one extra step is likely to be one of the people that they should be considering in the pile. Yeah,
I mean, they immediately rise to the top, because you know that we conduct, or I've conducted, different sort of processes, but my favorite by far and away is the assessment process, where we get a load of people in the room at the same time. It's so much fun. They get so much from it, and we get so much. But then we've seen, at its biggest, I think you and I did one where we had 16 people in the room for a day. Yeah. Now that's a lot of people to remember, with all sorts going on and all sorts of skills being demonstrated. And then those that, drop you an email or just reach out after, you do just spend a fraction of a moment and just look at, Joe over there. Oh, that was interesting. He's just in the middle. Let's just have a quick look. And they do, to some extent rise to the top. But it is surprising they don't do more of it. Yeah. And no matter how many times I've told people to do that, it's amazing. Again, only 10% of people take the initiative and do it. But again, it's probably a confidence issue. It might be a generational thing. We'll never work it out. You can only invite people to the party, they turn up, can't you? Absolutely. Cool. Well, look, so that's neat, actually, you telling me about your A-levels and then getting your place in law school. So let's kick off with, before we worry too much about lockdown and how it's impacted us, let's kick off with, if you can tell us in as much detail as you like, Such, your story to date, pre-entrepreneur, the businesses you've set up, and any family influences. The ball's with you. I'll just jump in if I've got any burning questions for you, Such. Right. Okay. Well, let's start at you initially. So I grew up in London. My father was an entrepreneur. I'm convinced now that I'm so much wiser, I guess, and experienced, that I learned so much from my dad just by osmosis, just by being around him. Yeah. So, in his heyday, my dad owned 4 different businesses. Wow. Now, all very small. One was a newsagent, one was an off-license, one was a video store before Blockbuster came along, and one was a pharmacy, which was his big stretch out of, I guess, an unregulated set of businesses to a regulated one. Yes. And I learned so much by serving within those businesses. I mean, I never got pocket money. My pocket money was my education, but
Yes.
My parents, particularly my father, he was very strict in that regard. He had limited education, come from abroad, started here in London when he was 18, worked his way up, got his businesses, married, had me as a child, and then didn't want for anything, made sure that I got the best education he could get me, which quite frankly was truly incredible. But made sure I understood the value of hard work and the lessons I learned, of which I could probably spend 2 hours talking about through him alone, have definitely shaped my approach to business. And hard work is something I don't shy away from at all. In fact, I love it. I enjoy it.
Do you think sorry to jump in, do you think the work ethic and the value of what you are given were two of the really big lessons from that time?
Yeah. So, I mean, I didn't really see my father during the average week other than a Sunday afternoon. He would be up and out by 5:30.
Wow.
And he wouldn't be back before 10:30 at night.
Yeah.
So I'd be obviously at school during the working week. He may nip home in the middle of the day. We didn't live too far from the shop. I mean, it was literally, a 2-minute walk.
Mm-hmm.
So it made it easy for him to nip back and get some sleep in the quiet periods, and then go back. But I didn't really see him. I would naturally work on the Saturday in the shops, and I used to do the paper rounds as well in the morning. But you don't really see your dad; it's just him. There it is, go. And then I'd be picking up all the other kids that hadn't turned up if they didn't turn up. So and whether rain or shine, it didn't matter. I just had to pick it all up. But then on a Sunday afternoon, I would, I'd get to spend a few hours with him, and really fond memories. He'd sit on the couch, the TV would be on, and I almost lie right next to him physically, really try and get close.
Yes.
And if we got lucky, we'd play a game of chess. But his work ethic definitely rubbed off on me, and I'll readily admit I struggle to separate work from my time or family time, because I do. It sounds very cringeworthy, this, but I do genuinely love what I do. I do enjoy working. Of course, there's parts of the work. Everybody has it that isn't, it isn't great. It's quite laborious, tedious at times, and not particularly fun. But in the main, I really do enjoy that. And I got that from him, and my mum as well. She supported my father in the businesses, but then also took care of the home and fed me well. So they both contributed in their own ways.
Really, really important stuff, isn't it? I mean, obviously there's family values there. Including hard work. You don't get anything for nothing. What you get out is what you've put in. Do you think, and it's interesting hearing you say that you love your work and it's difficult to separate time for family from what you're working, and I'm sure we all as business owners have had that holiday where you get told off because you're on your phone. Or you're reading a business book when you should be concentrating on the game of Scrabble. Do you think your dad loved his work?
I mean, that's a great question. I mean, I will ask him this weekend. I think there are elements of it that yes, because Dad, I mean, he had a traditional name, but his nickname was Rusty.
Yeah.
And he was known in the community as Rusty.
Yeah.
And even today, he still lives in the area. We moved, but it was another house, slightly bigger, but still, in fact, it was arguably closer than the first house I grew up in as a primary school, as a primary school kid. He will walk around and he'll bump into people that will say, "Hi, Rusty, how you doing? What you up to?" That's great. So I know he loved the community side of it. I know he loved, meeting people from all walks of life, having a really good chat, and supporting people. And I know he would do things for the elderly at the time, whatever it needed to be. If people were struggling to get their groceries, he would go and take care of that. He'd get around, and I guess what we take as for granted now, whether it be, any of these big supermarkets doing deliveries, okay, they may pay a premium for it now, but you take it for granted that you can have it to your doorstep.
Yes.
But, well, back then that wasn't there. You're going back to the 80s and the 90s, that wasn't a concept. So, I think, he definitely enjoyed that side of the business. I don't believe he enjoyed the long hours, he was very tired, and, there was a lot of heavy lifting involved. As soon as I could drive, I was the guy that did the cash and carry run. I was the young 17, 18-year-old that had the strength to go, and that was one of my chores, or one of my responsibilities every Saturday. Or every now and again we'd go together, if it was a really, really big shop. But I'll ask him.
And
I'll feed that to you offline.
He'll give you an honest answer, maybe, now that he's not doing it quite so much anymore.
I think he will. What was really interesting is, as soon as I got my first job, which effectively led into my training contract, he immediately put the business up for sale.
Okay.
And within 6 months, if not less, he'd sold it.
Great. Okay.
He moved it on. So he, I'm an only child, so I am very privileged to, to some extent, I was spoiled. I got all the attention I needed from my parents. There was something clearly in his mind, and I did ask him, and why did you wait? And he said, well, until I knew your career was off and I didn't need to worry about you from a financial point of view, I could make peace and move on. And I could, and I was like, I wish you would have done it sooner. But he said it was fine. I could have gone on a few more years. Mum and I talked about it. But it felt like the right time.
Yeah, well, that's perfect. It's a nice rounding, isn't it?
It was.
Clearly, he'd invested in you in terms of your work ethic, your education, and at the point where he could probably clearly see, well, I've achieved a goal now. Such is off on his own. He's going to plough his own way through to whatever he wants to achieve, and I can now take a step back, which is nice. It's neat, isn't it?
I mean, and one of the biggest challenges I've actually got as a parent now actually is, how do I do as good a job as they did on me? Because when I was growing up, we didn't have the luxuries that my children have, or have even had. Holidays didn't exist because we had businesses to run that were 24/7. Literally, the only day Dad could take off was Christmas Day, and that was only because the newspapers, they didn't print any newspapers.
Right.
Otherwise, every single day was a work day. So going on holiday was a non-starter. We just never did. But whereas with my kids, that's a very different concept. And of course, they have had the luxury of traveling quite far as well. And they haven't wanted for anything. And we constantly remind them that, there is some value associated with whether it's this piece of tech, or just remind them that, you used to get it from your own parents. We didn't have this in our day, and I can hear myself saying that now to my children, but I can understand why it's important to just keep them grounded. And we've got a real job on our hands to make sure they genuinely understand, the advantages of hard work. Because if that's there now, that will pay forward, and they'll take that hard work through to their GCSEs, their A levels, or whatever they're called by the time they get there, and hopefully their university.
Yes.
And that isn't as easy as I think as it might be seen. It's actually quite quite difficult. And I think we've all got that problem, just with so much around us.
Oh, we have. The world's so different, isn't it? Of course,
Yeah.
and even from when you and I were younger, and I'm sure that was a lot longer ago for me than it is for you. But it's an interesting point, and certainly about the values, because you've got inherent values there that are built in to you, and they will be rubbed off to your children and other people that are close to you and around you. They'll know what is important to you and your integrity, and that naturally, I think, transfers. And then you've got sort of more stated values. This is the way I see the world. So you've got the way I am naturally, and I can never change that. And the way I see the world is these things are important. And of course, you have to transfer that into your business, the way I see the world. Although with an owner-managed business or a founder-led business, often I think the values of the individual are always the values of the company. I'm sure there's some subtleties and nuance within that, but often that is the case when I look at it.
Well, so from my personal experience, I think that's absolutely spot on. With two businesses, we have two sets of core values across the two businesses. The people don't overlap. The only person, quite frankly, that overlaps the two businesses is me. And the core values between the two are that there is a little bit of overlap. One business has 4 core values, one has 6, and there is a slight overlap, but the whole 10, I think, would be a big part of me.
Yeah, of course.
And I think that's probably right. And because ultimately any business will have a leader, absolutely should have a leader. And the people within that business are, want the safety that the leader is in control, so that they can get on with doing what they do best, which is fulfilling their job.
Yeah.
Just take as you say, people watching this, will look back and, we're in the month of May, in the middle of COVID, as you say. Now, at the moment, employees in every business are absolutely looking to the leaders in those businesses for safety, whatever that might mean. And what's really important is ensuring that as a leader, my people understand that there is a plan, there is constant dialogue going on at the highest levels, and that information is flowing down to them, so that they know that the ship is being steered through this storm, and we're all safe. So let's just get on with doing what we do best, so that those in charge can keep steering, and that's fundamentally important. And core values then help shape that, because if you've got the core values that are ingrained within the leader, then they should naturally ooze those core values, and all the positives that flow from that. It becomes very easy for the people within the business to understand why the core values are as they are.
Yeah.
And I've always said that we would evolve our core values if the business has ever needed to. We've never changed them. No.
And you might at some point have to look at them again, but the fact that they've stayed the same tells its own story, doesn't it?
Yeah. Well, we look at them every month.
Oh, cool.
In our monthly meeting. So, we're constantly assessing them. And how we look at them actually is we get our employees to, in the monthly meeting, just share an experience they've had that's linked to one of the core values.
Yeah, amazing.
And whatever it might be.
Yeah.
And it just helps everyone remind themselves. And of course, there are some, there's some ones that just keep coming back. And sometimes we have to say, well, teamwork's a massive one. Not teamwork this month. We've had it 3 months in a row. We all love it, but let's try. There's a tough one here called integrity. Anybody want to talk about integrity?
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, no, it's cool. I'm absolutely fascinated by all that stuff. I think it's the foundation of any business, and it's interesting. I was chatting with someone else for an interview series I did for a journal. I did record it actually, but it's not one for the podcast. Anyway, he runs a tech business as well, actually, interestingly, and he said to me, integrity is so important to me and my business because it makes decision making easy. And he said, I often ask myself the question, could I explain this to my wife or my mum, and not get any resistance from them because of the justification of what I'm trying to do. And if I know they would agree it's the right thing to do, then it's the right thing to do, regardless of how tough that decision is. Because of course, those decisions usually involve people and a potentially short-term negative impact on them if it's a tough one. The easy ones are easy, aren't they? You know, and I thought it was a nice way of framing tough questions. Could I explain this to someone dear to me and have their full support in my proposed action? And if they would, because the people that love you always tell you the truth, then I know I can push forward with it. And just a good way of framing it. So I'm sure we'll come back to those values, but just skipping forward then. So completing university, I would imagine with a law degree.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Into your first role. So how long did it take from securing your first employment to having this idea about, hey, there might be something else for me here?
Well, I think I always had an inkling. It probably took, about 4 years, maybe a bit less. I mean, so when I entered my first role at a firm in Manchester, I got promoted in about 18 months so I'm a trainee solicitor at this point, to a team manager, I think was the title, which included taking responsibility for 4 other people, one of which was a solicitor.
Okay. Now
that was my first experience of a confrontational situation within my career, because as a trainee, taking responsibility for a solicitor that had qualified, had been in that firm a year longer than I had, if not a bit more, maybe even 18 months longer, was a real challenge, and I found that really difficult. Fortunately, we managed to find a way forward and work through it, and things like that. I in my mind, it's always a communication point, and most things are a communication point, an issue to get it right. But I think at that point, when I started to manage people, and there was more to just working on a client's matter. There were all these new dynamics which related to some extent some strategic points, helping and supporting others in finding solutions to problems, and then people management as well. I think I started to see that I had some real interests in that. And I was then, from that role, I stayed there for about 4 years. Then I was headhunted to a firm to help run the department. There was 3 of us because it had plenty of good work, but unfortunately the people within it hadn't been led particularly well, and they hadn't been skilled or trained. So 3 of us were brought in. In fact, we were all from the previous firm. 3 of us were brought in to get them skilled up and make them efficient, quite frankly, and productive. But within 9 months of me going there, I was then headhunted to be a partner in another firm with an opportunity to then explore all of the elements of business that wasn't related to working with clients. It was everything else. And that for me was the real moment. That was where I started to really find myself, and I was stretching my comfort zone by, going out and drumming up business, almost out of thin air. You can't, I think that until you do it, I believe there is a belief that getting business in relatively easly,
right?
And you and I both know that is absolutely not the case.
No, exactly.
That there's no mystery around it. It is really hard work, but it's very, very difficult to get work in, and of course to get repeat work in is even harder. And to some extent, I knew what I was getting myself into, but until you then do it, you just don't know. You just don't know how hard it is. you know, and lots of effort that was not necessarily wasted. They didn't turn into anything. You just had to put it down to education. Right, that's how not to do it next time round. And, you know, you just build up your bank of knowledge and experience and how to approach something, and then you find a groove, and inevitably a route to success. Although that route doesn't necessarily mean it's continued success. Things constantly evolve. You know, I think I could probably bring out some sort of strategy to generate work that we put in, say, 5 years ago today, and it would probably fail.
Yes.
Because of evolution and how business has evolved and how people have evolved. So you are constantly having to think and be strategic in your business development. But that was probably the first time. So what was I then? I was 30, was I 30, 29? Yeah, I think I was 29.
So you'd moved from client-side work, in inverted commas, and managing the client-side work, to business development, relationship building, acquisition.
Yeah, but I still had a caseload. I still had clients.
Yeah, okay.
I was actually doing the whole lot, and I was doing the kind of same hours my dad was doing. You know, it was a really early rise. I mean, this was pre-children, so you know, that to some extent made it slightly easier. You know, top of my priority list was work and had we got married then? I think we just got married, Hilda, my wife. But you know, that was it. And those two actually, to some extent, you could do both at the same time. It was quite relatively easy because my wife had her own career as well. So it wasn't as though there was you know, any time lost by me being out at weekends or whatever, or late nights. She had plenty to do herself anyway, and a good network and a social life. So it was a great year. That was for about a year, and towards the end, where we were getting to a milestone in our agreement, in how we'd agreed to transition this, because we'd worked together, me and this other person, but we hadn't we didn't know how it was going to evolve as this was a very small business, and needed huge commitment, huge effort, and we'd achieved that in the year. But I think our vision really was not on the same path. So we separated, party company, amicably. And I then went and had a bit of a look at a potential career change, and because I was a little bit, I think, uncertain about whether I wanted to be a solicitor practicing with client matter, or running a business, or something just new. And I'd always been within the legal space, and there was just something there that said to me, well, is there something else? And again, this might have been subconsciously my father's influence, moving from running a newsagents to then running an off license to then a video store to then a pharmacy, and then having all of them. And it might have been that influence there. So I did look at some alternative careers, and had a number of interviews, and some potential opportunities. But in the meantime, I decided to get back into just practicing the law by locuming. So I didn't want to go and find a new role, or just keep my options open. So I started locuming. I actually traveled quite far from Manchester. I had some locum posts in Leeds and in Sheffield. And I got great feedback from those businesses that I was locuming in. And one in particular wanted to buy me out of the locum contract, because of course quite frankly, the relationships between me and the agency, and of course they then invoice the business. And they can't just employ me; they have to kind of negotiate and settle with the agency. And I'd fallen back in love with the law, and fundamentally helping people, because that's what lawyers do. You know, lawyers help solve problems. They help people get out of a difficult situation. That's primarily our role. And I felt I was rejuvenated by the fundamental reasons why I wanted to become a solicitor.
Yes.
And I was approached by another person that I used to work with in my early years, who was a manager in a specialist litigation practice in North Manchester, to say, I understand you're local. Why don't you come and why don't you come and meet the boss? He's really interested to meet you. So I thought this was an interview. It wasn't. It was a very comfortable chat, not too dissimilar to this. And before I knew it, he said, "Look, I'd love you to come and work with us, and I'd love you to head up our litigation team, and I'd love you to put in some software into our business." That was one of the things I'd done in that year when I was running this business with this other person. I'd upgraded a load of software and platforms, so I'd started to experience the power of technology, and that's where my interest was starting to really come alive. So I joined this business, and I had a great few years, really successful for me, really successful for the company. I implemented a load of software and changes in the way they operated, brought huge efficiencies into the business, and really enjoyed my time. But I was still, there was still a big part of me that was like, I need to do this on my own. There was a big part of me that said I needed to do this on my own. And so this is now 2008, where I then I started to jot down my ideas, and it was coming up to my yearly review with my boss. And so I did something a bit different. He invited me for the usual meeting, and I said, "Can we do something a bit different? Can I take you for lunch?" Mm-hmm. And you talked before about, I wish more candidates would follow up.
Yeah.
Just to do something different. I needed to do something different because I needed my boss to think a little bit differently to what he would otherwise do, which is, let's have a look at your results, let's have a look at your remuneration package, and let's just move forward to tomorrow. Yeah. I wanted something a bit different, and I wanted to approach him to say, look, I've got this desire to help strategically influence a business. Now, I'm really enjoying my time here, but I want to do it with you. And that was my pitch. Took him out for lunch, and that was my pitch. And in fairness to him, he said, you absolutely deserve everything you're asking and the opportunities. But the biggest problem I've got, Such, is I've always owned my own business, and I've never shared the decision making process with anybody, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to do that. And I said, that's absolutely fine. I totally respect that. But then that means that I don't think I can stay here any longer, despite the fact that I really want to. I do really love working with you and the people, and we've really shaped something here over the last 3 years. And he said, look, is there a way that we can do it? Can I, he was prepared to get me my own physical office, wanted to get me my own building, and put people in it. He said, you can just run that, you can just run it as you want. And I said, well, that's great, but that's still doing the work that we're doing. That isn't necessarily strategically moving into new areas, and it wasn't quite what I was looking for. So I stepped away, and this is the back end of 2008, and what's looming, of course, is the last recession.
Yes.
So I pulled my plan together, and I identified that in order to do this properly, i.e. start my own business, this wasn't a decision to start a firm out of your back bedroom, which you could do in the work that I did. I don't physically see a lot of our clients, so it was entirely possible to do that. But I wanted to be professional. I wanted to grow the business. You want to get contracts in. So I felt that we needed to set up as though we'd been around for years. So that required quite a bit of capital, 6 figures, quite frankly.
Yeah.
And that was on top of the savings I'd squirreled away. And I managed to find some support from a bank to say, yeah, we can give you all of that. Not a problem. The plan looks really sensible here. There was a line of work that they'd committed on a piece of paper. So we were negotiating interest rates, and
God.
stock market went, the Lehman Brothers went, and overnight I couldn't get in touch with the relationship manager. Took me about a week, and then he emailed me and he said, "Such, really sorry, deal's pulled, everything's gone.
Gosh.
So I'm sorry, I can't help you." And I was obliterated, and here was my dream that had vanished within a matter of moments, and I was left with this pretty hefty business plan, you know, probably 3/4 of an inch thick, and a route to market. Litigation is recession proof, so the work is still there. So, and arguably increases in a recession. So, but the problem was I didn't have the capital to do what I wanted to do, and at that moment in time, I was a little bit lost. I didn't make a decision one way or the other. You know that, and I think that's one of the big things that, in my mind, is good in business, is making a decision. And whether it's right or wrong, to some extent, the chips will fall. But not making the decision is the worst thing.
Yes. It ties up a lot of emotional energy with it hanging.
Yeah, that's it. It just lingers, and it never goes away. And that's what I did then. I just didn't make the decision. And I ended up, a friend of mine invited me to a weekend in London where, you will have heard of Tony Robbins. It wasn't Tony Robbins. It was another American, but the same kind of a approach, I guess. And there was a particular moment in the weekend where the gentleman was talking about each person's history. He was saying to me, "Have a look at your history." He said, "Have you ever failed in anything you truly set your heart on? And have you ever really failed on anything that you were convinced you would succeed, or just convinced you wanted to do it? Was there ever a failure?" And I started to look back, and you know, we were given some time to think about it and jot down on a piece of paper. And I looked at everything. I looked at education. I looked at my family. I looked at my then wife, who I met when I was 13. You know, it sounds crazy, but when we were 13, there was just something about that girl at the time. And you know, we started dating when we were 18 and went to different universities, but made it work. And you know, and never regretted a moment of it. And so I asked myself, have I ever really failed? And even studying law, my father actually wanted me to become a doctor. He was really upset with my choice. He even went to the grand headmaster at our very prestigious secondary school in London, who he thought would convince me to step away.
Change your mind.
And he told me, actually, this is a good story. My dad went to, I went to Dulwich College in London, and you have a headmaster of a lower school, middle school, and upper school, and then you have a grand headmaster who you never meet. Mr. Verity was his name. And he went to him and he said, "I understand that that the school has been supporting my son in relation to studying law. Now, I'm really worried about my son studying law because of the color of his skin. I'm really worried about racism that exists within the sector." And my dad at this point was showing me newspaper articles around it and really trying to convince me to make the decision to become a doctor. I then get called into, this is before I was completing my UCAS form for choosing universities. I then get called into Mr. Verity's office. Now, you don't get called into Mr. Verity's office unless you've done something really good or you've done something really bad. I'm really myself, you know. And I walk in shaking, and he had a beautiful office, huge, long, grand table in the middle of it. His desk, something akin to the President of the United States, is down at the other end. You know, very antiquated, very beautiful. Loads of books behind him. And he sits me down and he said, "So your father has told me that you're interested in studying the law and becoming a solicitor. You don't want to tell me why?" So I gave him my reasons. And he said, "Well, your father was really worried about the racism that exists." And I pluck up the courage to ask him, "Well, what do you think? Do you think he's right?" And he paused for about 15, 20 seconds, clearly thinking the question through. And he said, I think your father's right.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, I think there is racism in the legal profession. However, I've spoken to your tutor, who was Mr. O'Keefe, and he's told me that he believes that you will succeed in anything you put your mind to, and he believes you will make a great lawyer.
Yeah.
And that was really surprising. And he said, so I think you should follow your dream, and I think you should carry on. So I go back home. Well, you can imagine my dad was not best pleased. I mean, he was
With
livid.
either of you at this point, he's now gunning for two people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he didn't have a go at me. In fairness to my dad, he had a massive go at the school, because he was paying very, very good money, very hard earned money, to send me to private school education. And he was very upset with the school, very upset. But in fairness to my dad, and I have to take my hats off, didn't really appreciate it at the time, but he let me make that choice.
Yeah.
And then he supported me ever since. And of course now, he's immensely proud, and I'm glad to make him so proud. But when going back to this weekend, it became clear to me I'd never, in anything I've really committed to, really set my mind to, I'd never failed. And it's something I always actually share with a lot of people that I mentor within my businesses. It's something I constantly spout is dedication and commitment, just to their own life, not to the business, just to their own life, their own decisions.
Yeah.
It's a big, I do the induction. I don't do as much of them now because of the way that my businesses are structured. But, certainly over the last, I guess, I probably haven't done them all for the last year and a half, 2 years, but up until 2 years ago, I was doing every single induction with every employee. And a big part of that induction was talking to them about the decisions that they've made to get them here. And I said, if you think getting here is a success, and hopefully you do, just getting this job, of course, of which they're nodding furiously at this point, I remind them that that was your choice, your decision, and probably your commitment to yourself that you're not going to let this job get away from you.
Yes.
And I said, then ask yourself, what other events in your life today have resulted in success? And the chances are it's because you committed and you believed in them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And at that moment in this weekend, I realized that I wasn't going to let this get away from me. I didn't matter that I didn't have 6 figures in my bank. I'd find a way. So on the train on the way back, I wrote my resignation letter.
Wow.
And on Monday, I handed it in.
Yeah.
Nothing had changed. I still didn't have the cash. I still had a great business plan. The recession was in full swing. So this is March 2009. And I'd set myself a date of opening the doors to my new office as I'd planned, not out the back room of my house, by the 1st of September.
Yeah.
And by the 3rd of August, a month earlier, I was doing exactly that.
Brilliant. Yes.
You find a way. Find a way because you commit to it.
So it's so important that you're right, the commitment. I think something similar happened with me where I was contemplating what I should do next, and I can't remember the exact quote. You might know it, but it was something like, when you decide and commit to a course of action that you believe in, the universe conspires to help you.
Yeah.
And now actually the universe tests you really quickly after that. But to start with, once you absolutely commit, and we're talking about leaping across a chasm here, we're not, and hoping that you get to the other side, a proper commitment, and when you've got to make that leap, you've got to put all your effort into it. Yeah. Well, the universe always comes along and pats you on the back and says, right, now that we're committed, let's get this show on the road. The universe is brilliant because it gives you a really big kick up the backside soon after it to say, and now you need to keep moving with it because I've given you my little blessing. It's all down to you from here. But that commitment is the key.
Yeah.
Don't do it half-heartedly. Fully commit.
That's it. I mean, I'm a big believer in the influence of the universe and how things naturally happen. But I think there's for those that aren't necessarily as well educated in the theory around the law of attraction and the influence of the universe, that I think there's a misunderstanding that happens by fluke, luck, coincidence. It's not. It's because that person or individual has taken a few steps beforehand, and they only need to be small steps, but they end up resulting in a very big event. And of course, the people on the outside only see the start point and the big event or the end point.
Yeah.
But they don't see the journey that that person has been on and all the steps they've taken to get to that milestone. You know, and there's a, there's a, and the story about, opening my doors to my law firm, Equitas Legal, in August 2009, people just see that as a decision that, oh, he went and set up a business for him, but they don't see the journey I've just shared with you and understand the full spectrum of everything that led to that, which was a lot of pain, a lot of hard work. But then the inevitability did arrive because that person, in that case me, made it happen. But it happens to everybody, and it's a shame people don't understand that, because there are loads of people there out in the world today that are doing some incredible things and making things happen. And they don't necessarily give themselves the credit for how they got there to make it happen. And they say, oh, well, that was just a bit of luck. I got lucky there.
Yes. Yeah, well, that's what they might think. What they also don't see, Such, is they don't see the mindset that goes along with it. And the mindset comes from the commitment, I think. It comes from lots of other things like family influences and the way you've been brought up. But regardless of all those things, the mindset that comes when you've committed 100% to something, it's like, whatever happens, this is going to work out because I'm committed to it. No matter what challenges, there can't be a bigger challenge than 2008 financial crisis. Our stories overlay on one another quite spectacularly in some ways, Such. But there'll be plenty of people now who are thinking, oh, well, the world's had it. We've got coronavirus. We're going to enter a massive recession. There'll be other people who have committed to their plan, just like you and I did in 2008, who are thinking, some of them will go, I'm not going to do it anymore. And some of them will be inspired, let's hope in some way, by what you and I are saying right now, to go, well, hold it a second. No, I still want to do it. Have I ever done anything that I've committed to 100% that's failed? No. Well, I'm going to do it then. And regardless of pandemics or economic crises, if you believe it and you do enough research and the steps that go before it, then and set out with idea of hard work, dedication, be prepared to make some sacrifices along the way, as long as they're not too big, you can have whatever you want.
Absolutely. And to those people right now that are starting their journey akin to what you and I did back in 2008 and making that decision, I think there's, again, a misconception that they're going to be all alone. Yes, to some extent they are. They are the one person in control. They're the ones that go to bed at night with all the problems and wake up in the morning and still have those same problems. That you will have sleepless nights. There will be difficult decisions to make. You will make wrong decisions. You'll make some right ones as well. But there are people around you that will help you get there. I mean, they're both my businesses I couldn't have without the people within them, quite frankly. Business does not exist without people. There's very few businesses that can operate without people. So those people are absolutely imperative for any sort of success. Then there are good advisors, whether they be good accountants. I mean, again, another great lesson from my dad was, he says, the two most important relationships you need to work on in business is one with your bank manager, because you don't know whenever you're going to need financial support. And then two, with your accountant, because you need to make sure you know your numbers. And I've totally embraced that to the point at which, this is going to sound crazy, but I have never failed in securing funding for my businesses ever in 10 years.
Right.
And that included so when I set up my business in 2009, so we're in the recession. Within 6 months, I'd created and demonstrated the growth of our business to the point at which I then did get an unsecured loan from the bank.
Yeah, perfect.
Because you know your numbers, you cultivate a relationship with your manager, and they understood your business, and very different. So there will be people out there embarking on the journey, and I actually think it's a great time. I mean, it's not an easy time to set
Yeah.
up in a recession because access to cash is very difficult right now.
Mm-hmm.
From a setup point of view.
Yes.
But I think that, that there are some great businesses that have begun at the start or in the middle of a recession. And the reason why they're great businesses is because the cash isn't so readily available, which means you've got to keep a closer eye on where you're spending, how you're spending, and what your returns are.
Yes.
And that then makes you a far healthier business as you then do grow. And then inevitably the recession will end. It will end at some point. This whole situation will come to an end. Now, if you're in a business which has started up and has got through that, and now business will start to accelerate and grow, you'll have the foundation blocks based in an environment which has been incredibly challenging. And now all of those challenges are gone. The ability to scale and grow is actually a lot easier. It just depends if you want it or not. You may be very comfortable at that point, in which case, happy days. But then the opportunities just start to come alive.
Yes. No, I agree. I agree with everything you've said. I think it's absolutely right, and it's great advice for people as well. And know your numbers. Are so important.
Incredibly important.
We'll have to have a sit down dinner one day so we can carry this conversation on. I suspect we'd talk for hours uninterrupted.
We probably could, yeah.
Because my dad always told me, build a relationship with your bank manager, because he'll always offer you an umbrella when the sun's shining, but he'll want to take it back off you when the rain starts to pour. So, and I did that, and I went to the bank in the same way at the very beginning, and I needed a not insubstantial, but not massive overdraft facility just to get me through the first few months. And the lady I went to see said, there'll be absolutely no problem processing this for you, Mr. Butler, because the plan you've come with is so detailed and tells me exactly what you'll be doing with every penny of that money if you need it. And you've already shown me the customers that you've potentially got lined up and the ones that you're going to be targeting. The amount that you're looking for is insignificant, and I've got every faith that you're going to turn this into a success. But it's only because I went prepared.
Absolutely.
And she said a lot of people turn up here with a fag packet and a few numbers written on the back of it, and they're asking for crazy amounts of money, and we can't give it to them. I think they'd have given me the money, recession or not, because I was so clear on what I wanted to do. So, but you're right, know your numbers, understand the power of sales and marketing, and the power of people within that. I mean, there's a lot of learning there. So take me forward slightly, Such. I think we need to wrap up in the next 20 minutes, but we could always do another one, but take me forward slightly. So you've run your legal business now successfully for a number of years, and here's a really interesting thing I think will add another layer. How do you turn out to be a tech business from a managing partner of your own, founding managing partner of your own legal business? How does that come about?
Well, I'm going to contradict myself here. Is this fluke? Is this coincidence? Fundamentally, this all started because there was a problem within my legal business, and that problem was pretty obvious to me. And what we started to notice, well, actually, I remember the moment. So we were 10 people strong. I was in a nice open plan office with everyone. I loved those days because we could just, what we call scrum down. We could just all come in and have a quick chat and then go back to our desk, literally wheel along on our chairs. Fantastic days. And I remember being at my desk in the corner of the room, and I noticed everyone has just received, pretty much within the space of a minute, a call from a client. And I earwig, and everyone is answering a question about that particular client's matter, about the future or something that has just happened or about to happen. And it was an unprovoked call. So I waited till everyone was off, and then I said, guys, just scrum in. So we just had a bit. I said, are we behind with our work? Because the data's telling me we're not. Your tasks all seem to be in check. So does everybody think we've got a problem that I'm missing? And everyone goes, no, we're all okay. We just had a call from a client. And I said, is this a bit of a regular occurrence? Are you seeing a lot of calls and emails now coming in? Or sorry, a lot of calls. And they said, well, yes, I am. I'm seeing quite a lot more emails now as well. And I thought, well, is there something, is there a sea change here in the way in which our legal services were being consumed? Because when I started practicing, our clients pretty much just left us to get on with it.
Mm-hmm.
They just said, here's my problem. Can you solve it for me? And tell me when you need me.
Yeah.
It was simple. It was that they responded to our information. The flow of information from us as the law firm to the clients resulted in information back. And then that was it. Then they'd wait for us. We were about to do some client research. Me and my business coach were going to do it. And this was running up to Christmas 2011. And I switched the research a little bit and I changed it to look at what were our clients' needs from us away from solving their problem. So obviously we know what we need to do in terms of the service because that's why they come to us. But what else do they need from us? So it was a bit softer. So I kind of labeled it, what are your emotional needs? And we did some research with the clients and we identified 4 key areas. And I still believe, so don't forget, this is back in the end of 2011, almost 10 years ago now. And I continually test this and share this with other senior partners, managing partners in my circle. And they still tell me it's still the same today. First one was speed. I don't think that's any different. I think any business where somebody's consuming a service doesn't need to be legal. Everybody wants speed. Everybody just wants to get through it quick. So that wasn't any different. The second one we labeled as information. So the way we were providing information to our clients in terms of the language we were using was full of legalese. It was just lawyers being lawyers, using phrases or certain terminology that made things confusing. So we needed to just make it easier for people to understand what we're saying. Use layman's terms. The third one, which was a biggie, was education. So this was where our clients were saying, I want to be involved in this process more than ever before. I want to know what's going on. I want to understand it. Dare I say it, I want a law degree at the end of this. And that was a challenge because I thought, well, there's no way we can service that for the fees we get paid. But I can't ignore it because we are all about customer service in this business.
Yeah.
And then the fourth one, which actually upset me, was you guys aren't using enough technology.
Right.
But they didn't tell me what. They just said, you're not using enough technology to deliver your service. And I'm thinking, well, gosh, I've set up this business to use as much tech as possible. My experience having used software and implemented it in previous businesses is absolutely at the forefront. We're using as much tech as any other practice, and I thought we need to do something about this. So I did some more research, and BDO, the International Accountants, had done a paper called Service 2020. And they started it in 2010 and they were updating it every year, and it talked about mega trends, and this document was about identifying how would customer service look like in 10 years time in 2020, and we're here now. Yes. Really interesting. And they got it right, and a number of mega trends were identified, and one key one was technology would be the enabler of all service. Yeah. Not the people in the business, not even the result, but the technology that would sit underneath that, delivering it. Yeah. Now, you fast forward to today. I mean, I don't know, Adam, if you're an avid Amazon buyer.
Yes. Yes.
Now I absolutely am.
Sadly, yes.
Yeah. Now, I challenge anybody to say they're not, but
yeah.
So, but you just think about Amazon now. I mean, I have had a very fulfilling relationship with Amazon for God knows how many years, yet not once have I ever spoken to a human, even when I've had a problem with something not being delivered. That happened recently, the wrong item being delivered or whatever. Never have I ever spoken to anybody, because the technology that sits underneath their delivery of their services is so good. You don't need to. It has replaced And actually, I'm pretty sure that every time I have communicated, I'm dealing with a chatbot, a piece of AI. I don't think I'm dealing with a human anyway. So you kind of you think about that, and I was reading this document, and it just dawned on me. I was on a train journey to see my uncle. I think I was going to be having some drinks. I wasn't driving, and I was reading this BDO report for about the third time, and then literally the penny dropped. If I built a mobile app that I could integrate into my systems, I knew how to do that. But if I built a mobile app, I could deliver all the information to my clients immediately, their speed. I could, because I'm using a mobile app, it would force our people to just use text messaging speak. Right? There's the information bit dealt with. In the app, I can put a timeline of events that happen and explain little bits and talk about terminology. There's the education bit, and the app's the tech bit. And I thought, actually, I could kill all four here with one piece of technology, I guess, one mobile app. So I start writing down furiously, and really need to try and find it. I've been looking for it, but we've moved, and I think I've lost the paper. But
that needs finding and framing.
Yeah, I know. And I ended up within 3 months building in the Equitas legal app, which I called In Case at the time, and we bootstrapped it. I got a developer to do the front end. I did the back end. I coded up the integration, the system, and we were able to get it out and into our clients' hands inside of 3 months. So we're in the summer of 2012 now. I think it was June. And it's that inevitable thing. You just press go and you just kind of hold your hands and, that leap of faith almost. But again, another moment of, just taking small steps to get there and absolutely believing this is the right thing to do. And the results were off the charts. I mean, really? It was the engagement we had was incredible. Yeah. The ratings, because in the app, I wanted to capture feedback. So every message that hit the client's app, they could rate just by a quick 5-star. Just press a button, done. No comment, none of that. Just tell us what you think. We were achieving 93% satisfaction within days.
Yes,
and it stayed at that level. And we were having engagement in the middle of the night, which I thought was really weird. And then we drilled down a bit deeper. We had a big section of clients that were night shift workers. Right. And what we facilitated now was we couldn't speak to them in the day, even though we were awake. They were asleep or doing their usual day. Yes. They wanted to deal with us in the middle of the night, but we were asleep. But now this platform gave them the ability to do that. And we noticed efficiency levels started to come out. In that first year, we saved, so we're only 10 people big, we saved £24,000 in print, paper, and postage.
Wow.
We saved, it was hard to document, but we believe we saved as much as that, if not more, in time, unrecoverable time that we otherwise would have spent handling calls or questions, which we wouldn't be able to recover as a fee because it's non-chargeable work. So, we guesstimated in excess of £50,000 in year one that we saved of a business of just 10 people. And it became clear to me that this MVP, this minimum viable product, which I built, could do more. I wanted to deliver signatures. I wanted, there was loads more I wanted to do with it, but I didn't know, I didn't have the capital as Equitas Legal to invest in that. So I started to speak to people within the sector as to whether this would be something other businesses would value. Because there wasn't this solution. This solution didn't exist. If it did, I would have put it in myself. I wouldn't have built it. Yeah. So it became clear that this wasn't something that was around. So I then built a business plan to launch In Case as a totally separate technology platform, as a totally separate business, named the company LavaTech. And that company was formed in June 2013. And what took us 3 months to build this first version now took us 9 months to build this second one.
Yes.
Because we'd learned so much from version 1 that we wanted to evolve and change. And of course, we wanted to do so much more with version 2. And it took us a lot longer to get there. But then when we got there, even before it was ready for launch, I had 8 law firms that had signed up to the platform.
Wow. Yeah.
And they hadn't even seen it yet. they'd only seen my version 1.
Yeah, they just got the idea, and they'd seen how you had a good case study, didn't you?
That was it. And it wasn't just it was a real one with real data, which I was happy to share.
Yeah.
Obviously, you know, there was a conflict. I had to be open and say, look, this is my business and that's my company, but it's real data, you know, use it, test it, tell me what you want to know. You know, I'm not trying to hide behind anything here, but yes, there is a self-fulfilling interest. So I was really open about that. But fortunately, the businesses I approached recognized the opportunity. And then from there, we just grew. And in case now is a huge business in terms of its opportunities, because at its core, it's a communication platform.
Yeah.
It solves the challenge of communicating between a business and an end user, whoever that end user is. And if there is a relationship which is going to span a few months or a few years, for the end user, it's an incredibly valuable tool, because most businesses will have some sort of a document storage system or file management system or case management or whatever. But your end user, your client, won't. They won't have anything. They'll be receiving emails or phone calls or letters, and of course it will be everywhere. But with the app, actually, it's all in one place. It's all centralized, and they can call it back. They can go and search information that they may have told you about 3 months ago or 3 years ago. They don't need to bother you with it. It's at their fingertips. And now we've really expanded across the legal space, and you know, there are opportunities outside of the UK that we're also exploring, and there are other verticals that we're exploring, and it's such an exciting business. If somebody had told me, you know, do you think you'd own a tech business? Not in a million years. You know, it was just never something that I thought would be something I would want to do or have the opportunity to do it. But I'm so blessed that it came. But again, it goes back to taking the initiative, grabbing the opportunity, and taking the small steps to get to a point. And you know, our business or the app business is in a great position, especially given what's going on right now. You know, there's a real need for technology in various guises, and this is one of them. So we've seen a spike in interest for sure. We've really tried to support the sector as best we can, because it's given me so much, and bring to the sector what they want, you know, in terms of features. And I don't necessarily want to get into detail, but I think that's really important. Any business needs to listen to their customers, really needs to listen to what they want, and not presume that you know it just because you're in the sector and you're delivering it and you're doing it day in, day out. Don't presume for one moment that you really do know what your client or your customers or your consumers want. I think, you know, getting that feedback from your client base is so vitally important, and helping them shape that. You know, in the app business, we have a client event once a year, and that is to bring our clients physically to us, and that's about showcasing what we've done, but then speaking to them and asking them, what do you want in the next year? But we don't just do it once a year. You know, once a quarter, we're still touching in with them and saying, well, what do you want? What are you seeing? And it helps feed our roadmap. It helps feed the evolution of our products. And that's a big part of why I genuinely believe, you know, we're so successful. And since, you know, okay, we were first to market, there are competitors now, but that's a good thing. But you know, we maintain that leading edge. You know, we are at the forefront, and everyone's kind of following in our footsteps.
But without that foresight, without that forward vision, without that regular communication with your customer base and building those relationships, listening, acting, implementing, you could easily get left behind. But the thing that got you to the position that you're in was the thing that will drive you forward to the next one, whether that's vertical markets, international expansion, build out the legal app through various sectors within legal, of course. And I know that you're on with all of those. It strikes me as well that for a business, if I've had a good, and I know we've had a brief conversation around recruitment, and could there be an app that was useful for recruitment? So there's the verticals. But one of the things that would interest me is the fact that once my client or candidate has used my app, I've got customer retention.
Yeah.
As long as it's worked neat and smooth, which it would, because I know that you wouldn't release it until it did, and we'd have gone through the minimal viable product piece before launching hard launch. Long as it works smooth and neat, your customer retention will go through the roof, because they'll never go anywhere else for that service again. As long as you're not charging crazy prices, but you can certainly charge a premium because of that customer retention, and a premium allows you to deliver exceptional service. Try delivering exceptional service when no one's paying you any money.
Yeah.
Very difficult, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Try delivering exceptional service when you're, the best in the market and charging accordingly. It becomes a lot easier. So,
yeah. And that goes back to, people will, value the service and be prepared to pay for it if it is a premium service or a premium offering bolted onto something else. If you've got it right, that's why you look at your big brands, and that's why they can charge certain prices, because it's not necessarily the product, but it could be the experience they receive, the finishing touches. There was a friend of mine recently got sent as a gift a smartwatch, Tag Heuer connected smartwatch. Now, the experience in that is incredible, because he sent me photos, and actually the of course a watch is a watch, they're not particularly big, but the box is like this big, and it opens up, and of course there's really strong colors, and it's laid out, and of course the experience adds to the mystery, which then adds to the product, which then adds to the price.
And the brand loyalty as well.
And the brand loyalty then comes back in, and yes, that's absolutely self-fulfilling. But you're right, you should always be, MVPs are really important. So, in any business, even starting out, your business is an MVP, your delivery is an MVP. Assuming that's going to stand still is very ignorant, very dangerous, because that's where your business will fail. It's about, as soon as you've got that MVP, it is about reiterating it and saying, what's next? How do I build on this? You're not throwing it out. You're like, how do you build on this? How do I constantly evolve it so it's better the next time around for the next consumer? How do I make it better for the next person and then the next person? Because the moment it stands still is probably the moment that your business is going to start to decline.
Yes.
There's a great story. Everyone remembers Uber, don't they?
Yeah.
Knows Uber.
Knows
but
Uber,
there was a pre-Uber.
Oh, right.
Halo.
Oh, okay.
And actually, I'm pretty sure the guy that wrote the $1 billion app, which is a very thick book, but a very interesting book, was the guy behind Halo. But nobody remembers Halo, because Halo was Uber, just with a different company. But what Halo didn't do right was they didn't, in my eyes, they didn't take that approach to evolution of their solution and their brand. There is a slight caveat to that. They weren't as well capitalized either.
No.
But Uber came along, learned what Halo had done, and had the capital to then do it a lot better. And go a lot bigger. And of course, not very many people know or use Halo anymore. I think it's still quite popular in some US cities, but of course Uber's worldwide.
Yes.
Totally different scale. And that's because, if you don't continually evolve your MVP or your business or your service offering, building on it, doesn't mean you change it necessarily.
No.
I think that is arguably a turning point in that business.
Yes. Yeah. Well, look, we're coming to the end of our time. Time flies, I find,
It
when I'm
really does, yeah.
chatting with people. I know I sent you a list of questions I might ask. Do you know what? I think neatly we've covered a lot of that ground without us having to ask them specifically. But what I wanted to say, such as I'll ensure there's links in any descriptions on anything I put out. So I'll put Aquitas Legal in, I'll put In Case or Lava Tech. I'm sure you'll tell me
Oh
what the
yeah,
best
yeah.
ones
I'll
are.
leave it with you there. Thanks.
And I'll share those because it'd be very interesting for people to go and see those stories. If they're interested, they can reach out to you or me and I'll connect you up. But my last question, which is often my favorite question, depending on how it's answered, is, and I'm going to just check that I frame it right. Yeah, I call it the time machine question. Such, it's the kind of thing you and I, if we were being mean on an interview with one of our candidates, might ask them. So I'm throwing it back to you now. Time machine question. If you could go back in time, let's say you've got a time machine, it was possible, and you could back in time, where would you go to and what would you tell yourself, or what might you change about a specific moment? What would you tell yourself, or what might you change?
Oh, that is a hard one, and that wasn't in your email. That one, was it?
Oh, wasn't it? Or did I cut that one off at the end?
I think you did.
Oh, good. Well, this is live then.
This is live. Oh, I tell you what, that's really hard because I'm a big believer in fate, and the choices that we make have led us to where we've got to, or where I've got to, if I'm being more specific. So, and because I am so privileged to be where I am, health-wise, family-wise, business-wise, I wouldn't change any of that, because it otherwise would be a sliding doors moment and would lead me somewhere else. I guess if I was pushed to go to a moment where I would tell myself something, it would there's probably a couple, but I think the one that it's difficult. It's really hard. I think probably, I did touch on it before, it's probably where where I'd parted ways with the business where I was a part owner, the law firm, and I had a look at potentially other industries and whether there were other careers, because I wasn't sure whether the law was for me or the sector was for me. And I think I'd probably go back to that moment and tell myself, despite what's happened here, and this hasn't worked, because I desperately wanted that to work out for me.
Yes.
But it didn't. We didn't share the vision, which in hindsight is now absolutely fine. But at the time, I was really upset, and I had some resentment towards myself. It ended up amicably fine, but I almost said to myself, I think you've wasted a year of your life there. And financially, you went through a lot in that year, because I was investing into the business at the same time. And what have you got to show for it? It was almost about having something tangible to show for it.
You're beating yourself up a little bit.
Yeah, and what I didn't recognize is how much I had learnt in that year.
Yes.
And I would tell myself, don't look at what you don't have now. Look at what you do have, which is fundamentally the knowledge. And that year had given me so much experience in business that I was far better equipped when I started my own practice than I otherwise would have been. And it was only because I went through that year, which I saw as painful at the time, whereas now I see it as an education. And I just tell myself, that's your year of study.
Yes, that's your real year of study.
Yeah.
Everything else was the theoretical stuff, and you've done great.
That's it.
This is where your real learning's happened.
Yeah.
And I'm very similar. I think it's a great answer. Such, I've made more than a few mistakes in my time. But I'm always wary that I wouldn't go back and change anything really, because I wouldn't want to be in a different place than the one that I'm at. I certainly wouldn't want to miss the opportunity to have my wife and kids with me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I wouldn't give up anything for that. So the sliding door moment makes me think I wouldn't change anything. But what I think I would do is I'd go back and I'd just tap myself on the shoulder and I'd say, keep doing what you're doing. You've got a fantastic future ahead of you. And that would just be, and then I'd disappear again.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'd be like, oh, you bugger, I wanted to ask you all these questions.
Yeah, yeah.
But just to know that I was going to be really happy and successful, and that I'd always remain challenged. But it's a destiny question, isn't it? And maybe I need to reframe the time machine slightly and ask it differently. But no, really cool answer. The value of lessons learned from real experience. Well, look, It has been an absolute pleasure hearing your story, Such. I think we knew each other quite well before, but I think I know you certainly a lot better now. I'll edit all this together and I'll share it with you very soon, and we'll put it out there. But any closing remarks before we sign off for the day?
No, I've really enjoyed it. I mean, I think reflection is massive. I think we've had this conversation about reflecting, and it's a big part. So it's great to be asked questions, about my life. It's not something that happens that often. So
yeah,
it was great to share some of those stories, and it's got me thinking, about certain parts of my life that, I just need to pinch myself and remind myself, and then particularly my father, and there's a good question there I'm going to ask him, which will make for the next Zoom call, quite interesting. So, but I've loved every minute of this. So thanks so much for inviting me onto this, and I hope it's of value to people that watch it.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm absolutely certain it will be such. And I guess my closing remark is, once I've edited it and done hopefully a good job with that, some people that could find some benefit from it is maybe your dad. I'm sure he'd love to hear that story.
Yeah.
And also your kids. If you want an easy route to let them be reminded of the value of what it means and what it takes, as long as you're not too embarrassed by it, and they'll be cringing behind their cushions. Hopefully it will form a nice little document that they can go back and study whenever you think is appropriate for them. So it's been a real pleasure, mate.
Yeah, and thanks for pulling that together, because I think you're right. That video will be, I think my dad will love it. My mum will absolutely love it.
Yes.
But it's something that I don't think I could otherwise have created. So for that, I'm so grateful to you for pulling it together.
I'll get it back to you really soon, Such. We will sign off live here now, actually. I will press the end button. But let's catch up soon. Stay safe. And I'll be in touch.
You too. All the best. Thanks again, Adam. Cheers now. Take care. Bye-bye.